Good evening and welcome to True Crime Sleep Stories. Tonight we're traveling back almost a century to the city of Liverpool in the winter of 1931, where one quiet street became the setting for a mystery that has never truly been solved. It is a story that has puzzled detectives, judges, novelists, historians, and curious readers for generations. Even today, more than 90 years later, no one can say with certainty exactly what happened inside a modest terraced house on Wolverton Street. Some have called it the impossible murder. Others believe the answer has been hiding in plain sight all along. But tonight, there is no need to solve the mystery. Instead, we'll simply wander through the streets as they once were, meet the ordinary people whose lives became unexpectedly intertwined, and gently follow the events as they unfolded during one cold January week. As always, this is not a story told for shock or sensation. Behind every famous mystery are real people who lived ordinary lives, with routines, friendships, hopes, and quiet evenings that seemed no different from countless others. So settle comfortably wherever you are. Perhaps dim the lights. Allow the pace of the day to slow. Before we get into tonight's full, uninterrupted story, we'll take a quick moment to hear from our sponsors. And remember, ad-free episodes are always available to our Patreon members. We'll be right back. Welcome back to True Crime Sleep Stories. Now settle in and get comfortable. Imagine the gentle hiss of rain against old brickwork, the distant ringing of a tram bell, and the warm glow of gas lamps reflected across wet cobblestones. Our journey begins in Liverpool, at a time when Britain was slowly finding its feet after one world war, while unknowingly standing only a few years away from another. The city bustled with industry and commerce by day. Yet as darkness settled each evening, long rows of red brick houses grew wonderfully quiet. Somewhere among them stood number 29 Wolverton Street. At first glance, it was simply another family home, but history would remember it differently. Liverpool in the early 1930s was a city of remarkable contrasts. It was one of Britain's busiest ports, welcoming ships from every corner of the world. Cargo vessels arrived carrying timber, cotton, tea, tobacco, spices, and countless other goods that connected the city to distant continents. The docks rarely slept, and generations of Liverpudlians earned their living through shipping, trade, insurance, engineering, or the railways. Yet beyond the crowded waterfront, life moved at a gentler rhythm. Neighborhoods spread steadily north and east from the city's center, each formed by neat terraces of brick-built homes standing shoulder to shoulder. Their narrow streets echoed with familiar sounds that scarcely changed from one week to the next. Milk carts making their morning rounds, children skipping along pavements on their way to school, the steady footsteps of workers leaving before dawn, and church bells marking the passing hours each Sunday. The district of Anfield was one such neighborhood. Today it is known around the world for its famous football stadium, but in 1931 it was primarily a residential community where families had lived for decades. Rows of modest Victorian houses stretched into the distance, each remarkably similar to the next. Lace curtains softened the windows. Coal fires burned behind polished grates during winter evenings. Small backyards contained washing lines, coal sheds, and carefully tended gardens that flourished whenever spring finally returned. January, however, offered little warmth. The skies often remained stubbornly gray from morning until dusk. Rain drifted in from the Irish Sea with little warning, coating the pavements in a constant sheen of moisture. Smoke from thousands of coal fires mingled with low clouds, creating a soft haze that settled over rooftops before disappearing into the fading afternoon light. The days themselves were surprisingly short. By 4:30, darkness had already begun to gather, and gas lamps flickered into life along the streets. Shopkeepers pulled curtains across their windows, while neighbors greeted one another beneath glowing lamps before retreating indoors for the evening. Inside those homes, routines were wonderfully predictable. The kettle would be placed upon the stove. A wireless radio might play softly in one room while someone read the evening newspaper in another. Families gathered around fireplaces that served as both the warmest place in the house and the natural center of conversation. Entertainment was often homemade. Music remained an important part of everyday life. Pianos occupied countless front parlors, violins emerged after supper, and neighbors frequently visited one another for simple evenings of conversation or amateur performances. Chess clubs, church groups, literary societies, and local debating circles offered quiet companionship during long winter nights. It was an era that valued routine. Many people walked the same streets every day, greeted the same shopkeepers each morning, and boarded the same tram at precisely the same hour. Familiarity created comfort, and comfort created trust. That trust extended throughout neighborhoods like Wolverton Street. Doors were not always locked immediately after someone entered. Local tradesmen were recognized by name. Insurance collectors visited houses every week, often staying long enough for a friendly conversation over tea. Children played together beneath the watchful eyes of neighbors who knew not only every family on the street, but often several generations of them. News traveled remarkably quickly. A conversation overheard at the butcher's shop might become common knowledge before lunchtime. By evening, the entire neighborhood could be discussing the same small incident without anyone remembering precisely how the story had traveled so fast. Against this backdrop stood number 29 Wolverton Street. It looked little different from the dozens of neighboring houses. A narrow entrance opened into a modest hallway. The front parlor faced the street, while the kitchen looked towards the rear yard. Upstairs were simple bedrooms, furnished not for luxury, but for comfort and practicality. Nothing about the house suggested it would one day become one of Britain's most discussed crime scenes. If a passerby had paused outside during the winter of 1931, they would likely have noticed nothing unusual at all. A curtain shifting slightly, a lamp glowing softly behind the window. Perhaps the distant sound of someone practicing the violin. It seemed, in every sense, an ordinary home occupied by ordinary people. And perhaps that is one reason the mystery has endured for so long. Great castles and isolated mansions often invite dramatic stories. A quiet terraced house on an unassuming Liverpool street does not. Yet history has a curious way of choosing its landmarks. Sometimes it selects the places that appear most ordinary. William Herbert Wallace was, by almost every account, a thoughtful and remarkably reserved man. By the time our story begins, he was in his early 50s and worked as a collections agent for the Prudential Assurance Company. His occupation required patience more than excitement. Each week, he traveled familiar routes across Liverpool, collecting small insurance payments from customers whose families depended upon careful financial planning during uncertain economic times. His work also meant he became a familiar face in many households. People remembered him as polite, punctual, and softly spoken. Conversations were rarely hurried. A collection might take only a minute, yet it often ended with friendly discussion about the weather, family news, or local events before William quietly continued to the next address in his notebook. Outside work, his interests reflected an endlessly curious mind. He enjoyed reading philosophy and history, particularly the writings of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He taught chemistry classes during his spare time and belonged to a local chess club where strategy mattered more than speed, and conversation often continued long after the final pieces had been returned to their boxes. Friends described him as intelligent rather than charismatic. He seemed happiest among books, sheet music, and thoughtful discussion. His wife, Julia Wallace, shared many of those quieter pleasures. Julia was around 52 years old and possessed a deep love of music. Together, she and William enjoyed evenings spent playing the violin and piano, transforming their modest parlor into a tiny concert room for an audience of 2. The couple had no children. Instead, they built a life defined by routine, companionship, and shared interests. Their marriage appeared calm and affectionate. Visitors frequently commented on the peaceful atmosphere within their home, where conversation flowed easily, and evenings followed familiar patterns that changed very little from one season to the next. Like many couples of their generation, they had experienced both happiness and hardship. William had struggled with recurring health problems for years following major surgery earlier in life. Those who knew him often remarked that he moved carefully and deliberately, conserving his energy whenever possible. Julia quietly adapted to those limitations, and together they settled into rhythms that suited them both. Neighbors rarely recalled arguments. If anything, the Wallaces seemed almost invisible. They attended to their own affairs, greeted acquaintances warmly, and lived with a modest simplicity that attracted little attention. There was nothing glamorous about their lives, nor was there anything particularly mysterious. Monday evenings followed much the same pattern. William would leave home for his chess club, while Julia remained at the house. The arrangement had become so familiar that neighbors scarcely noticed it anymore. It was simply another ordinary winter evening in Liverpool. Or so everyone believed. Within the next 24 hours, a single telephone message delivered to William at his chess club by an unknown caller using an unfamiliar name would quietly interrupt that comforting routine. At first, it sounded like nothing more than an unexpected business opportunity. No one, not William, his fellow chess players, or the person who carefully wrote down the caller's message, could have imagined that this brief conversation would become one of the most scrutinized telephone calls in British criminal history. The mystery had not yet begun, but its first, almost imperceptible move had already been made. Monday, the 19th of January, 1931, began much like countless other winter Mondays in Liverpool. The morning was cold, with low clouds hanging over the rooftops, and a damp chill lingering in the narrow streets. People hurried along pavements with collars turned against the weather, while shopkeepers swept yesterday's soot from their doorsteps before opening for business. For William Wallace, the day followed familiar routines. He completed his work as usual, and that evening prepared to attend the Liverpool Central Chess Club, which met at the City Cafe in the heart of the city. The cafe was a comfortable gathering place where the conversation was often as enjoyable as the games themselves. Wooden chessboards rested on polished tables beneath electric lights, while players quietly discussed openings, endgames, and newspaper reports from international tournaments. William arrived shortly before 8 o'clock. Before he could settle into his match, the club captain approached him with an unexpected message. About 20 minutes earlier, a telephone call had come into the cafe. The caller had asked specifically for William Wallace. Since William had not yet arrived, the message had been carefully written down. According to the caller, a gentleman named R.M. Qualtrough wished to discuss taking out an insurance policy. Would Mr. Wallace please visit him the following evening at 7:30 at 25 Menlove Gardens East? For an insurance agent, such requests were hardly unusual. Prospective customers often made appointments by telephone or through recommendations from friends and neighbors. Although William did not recognize the name, there seemed little reason to question it. He copied the address into his notebook. Interestingly, he first wrote Menlove Gardens West before correcting himself to East. It was a tiny detail, one that would later receive extraordinary attention. At the time, however, no one thought much of it. The chess match proceeded. Conversation returned to bishops and pawns rather than mysterious callers. When William eventually walked home through Liverpool's quiet streets, the message from Mr. Qualtrough seemed little more than another appointment waiting in tomorrow's diary. The next day unfolded with equal normality. Tuesday, the 20th of January, was another gray winter day. William spent the daylight hours making his regular insurance collections. Customers later remembered nothing unusual about his manner. He appeared polite, composed, and much as he always had. One client invited him in for tea. The visit delayed him slightly, though not enough to disturb the evening's appointment. Back at Wolverton Street, Julia was at home. There is something quietly poignant about imagining that ordinary afternoon. Perhaps she tidied the house. Perhaps she practiced a little music. Perhaps she simply enjoyed the peaceful rhythm of another winter day. History often preserves the remarkable moments while allowing the ordinary ones to fade away. Yet it is those ordinary hours that remind us Julia was living a real life, not merely occupying the pages of a mystery. As evening approached, daylight disappeared quickly. Street lamps flickered to life. Neighbors closed curtains against the cold. Around 6:45, William left home to keep his appointment with the mysterious Mr. Qualtrough. He locked the house behind him and made his way toward the tram. The journey across Liverpool was not especially simple. Menlove Gardens lay several miles from Wolverton Street in a pleasant residential district of larger homes and tree-lined roads. It was unfamiliar territory. During the journey, William reportedly mentioned to the tram conductor that he was a stranger to that part of the city. When he finally arrived, he began looking for number 25. At first, the search seemed straightforward. He found Menlove Gardens West, then North, then South. But despite asking for directions and carefully checking street names, he could not find Menlove Gardens East, because it did not exist. No one thought much of this at first. Street names occasionally confused visitors, and new housing developments sometimes altered addresses before maps could keep pace. William knocked at number 25 on Menlove Gardens West. The resident politely informed him that no one named Qualtrough lived there. Still believing some misunderstanding had occurred, he continued searching. He asked a passing police constable. He spoke with local residents. Each conversation produced the same answer. There was no Menlove Gardens East. Slowly, the possibility dawned that someone had played an elaborate practical joke. Perhaps a mischievous acquaintance. Perhaps someone who had mistaken the address. With little else to do, William eventually began the journey home. Meanwhile, Wolverton Street remained quiet. Neighbors later remembered little out of the ordinary. The evening settled gently across the row of terraced houses. Coal fires glowed behind drawn curtains. Families gathered around supper tables. The familiar sounds of crockery, conversation, and wireless programs drifted softly through adjoining walls. Nothing seemed unusual. Only later would investigators realize how much importance would be attached to these ordinary recollections. Who had heard footsteps? Who had noticed a door opening? Who had seen a stranger? Memories that had appeared insignificant on Tuesday evening would soon become subjects of intense scrutiny. By the time William returned to Wolverton Street later that evening, the street itself looked exactly as he had left it. The familiar brick houses stood in silence beneath the winter sky. The lamps cast pale circles of light onto damp paving stones. Everything appeared reassuringly ordinary. And yet, as he approached his front door, something felt unexpectedly wrong. His key would not open the lock. He tried again. Still nothing. Puzzled rather than alarmed, he walked around to the rear entrance. Neighbors, William and Amy Johnson, happened to be nearby as they prepared to leave for an evening walk. They noticed William struggling with the doors and paused to speak with him. He asked whether they had seen or heard anything unusual. They had not. The Johnsons waited outside while William entered the house alone through the back. The interior was completely dark. For a few quiet moments, nothing could be heard. Then William returned to the doorway. His voice was calm but unmistakably shaken. "Come and see," he said. "They've killed her." In that instant, an ordinary Liverpool house became the center of a mystery that would endure for generations. Within minutes, neighbors were gathering quietly outside number 29 Wolverton Street. News traveled quickly in close-knit communities, particularly during winter evenings when most families were already indoors. A police officer was summoned, followed by detectives and medical examiners. Before long, the once peaceful street was illuminated by lanterns and occupied by uniformed officers, moving carefully between the house and the pavement. Inside, investigators began the painstaking task of understanding what had happened. The front parlor, usually a place of music and conversation, had become the focus of every question. The house itself showed surprisingly few signs of disturbance. There were no broken windows. There was no obvious evidence of a violent struggle spreading from room to room. Instead, many of the details seemed strangely contradictory. A small cash box had been forced open, suggesting the possibility of a robbery. William Wallace reported that several pounds were missing, yet other money remained untouched elsewhere in the house. Julia's handbag still contained coins and notes. A glass jar upstairs also held cash that had not been taken. If theft had truly been the motive, why had some money been ignored? It was the first of many questions that would resist easy answers. The detectives continued their careful examination. They noted that there was no clear sign of forced entry into the house itself. This immediately raised another possibility. Had Julia willingly opened the door to someone she knew? Or had the visitor entered in some entirely different way? Again, certainty remained elusive. William Wallace answered questions throughout the evening. He described the mysterious telephone message, his unsuccessful search for Menlove Gardens East, the conversations he had held with residents while looking for the address, and his return home. Police officers checked his clothing with great care. Remarkably, they found no obvious traces that appeared to connect him directly with the killing. Yet investigators were reluctant to dismiss him as a suspect. As they retraced the events of Monday evening, another curious discovery emerged. The telephone call made by the mysterious R.M. Qualtrough had been placed from a public telephone box located only a short distance from the Wallace home. To detectives, this seemed more than coincidence. If the caller had deliberately invented the appointment, then perhaps the appointment itself had been designed for only one purpose: to draw William away from home, or perhaps to provide him with an alibi. The investigation now began to turn in two very different directions. Some detectives believed the explanation was surprisingly simple. Perhaps William himself had arranged the entire sequence of events. According to this theory, he had made the anonymous telephone call, created the impossible appointment, and carefully constructed a reason for being away from home at precisely the right time. It was certainly a bold idea, but was it practical? That question would soon dominate the entire case. Meanwhile, newspapers across Britain quickly recognized that this was no ordinary investigation. The unusual address, the mysterious caller, the respectable insurance collector, the quiet musician. Every development seemed to deepen the puzzle rather than simplify it. Readers eagerly followed each new report, hoping that the next edition might reveal the missing piece. Instead, every answer seemed to produce another question. One witness remembered seeing William traveling calmly on the tram. Another recalled him asking directions in Menlove. Several people confirmed speaking with him during his unsuccessful search. These accounts appeared entirely consistent with his own version of events. Then came another important recollection. A young milk delivery boy, Alan Close, reported speaking with Julia at the house during the early evening. If his memory of the timing was correct, it suggested that Julia was alive later than some investigators had first believed. Only later would police realize just how significant those few minutes might become. The estimated time of death was itself uncertain. Medical science in 1931 could not provide the precision available today. Doctors relied largely upon physical observations that were influenced by room temperature, weather conditions, and many natural variations between individuals. Different medical opinions produced different estimates. That uncertainty complicated everything. If Julia had died earlier, one theory gained strength. If she had died later, another became considerably more difficult. Time itself seemed almost unwilling to cooperate. The house also presented curious practical problems. Investigators believed that whoever had committed the crime would likely have left visible traces behind. Yet, remarkably little evidence appeared elsewhere in the home. No clear trail led investigators toward a definite conclusion. Every observation seemed capable of supporting more than one explanation. Soon, the police focused their attention squarely upon William Wallace. The case against him was almost entirely circumstantial. There were no eyewitnesses placing him inside the house at the crucial moment. No murder weapon had been conclusively identified. No confession was ever made. Instead, investigators argued that the unusual telephone call, the impossible address, and the apparent opportunity combined to form a compelling picture. Others remained unconvinced. Friends described William as gentle, intellectual, and devoted to Julia. Colleagues found it difficult to imagine him committing such an act. Even some experienced observers questioned whether the evidence truly demonstrated guilt beyond reasonable doubt. As weeks passed, the mystery seemed only to deepen. Every theory solved one problem while creating another. If William was innocent, who had invented the name Qualtro? Who knew enough about his routine to lure him across the city? If an unknown visitor had entered the house, why had Julia apparently admitted them without hesitation? And if robbery had been the motive, why had money been left behind? Perhaps the greatest mystery was not any single piece of evidence. It was the way every piece seemed to point in two directions at once. Like a carefully played chess match, every move invited an equally convincing reply. the deeper investigators looked, the more evenly balanced the board appeared. In April of 1931, William Herbert Wallace stood trial for the murder of his wife. The proceedings attracted extraordinary public attention. Newspapers filled their front pages with diagrams of Liverpool streets, sketches of the Wallace home, and lengthy discussions of tram timetables, telephone calls, and the curious address that did not exist. Readers across Britain debated the evidence as though they, too, were members of the jury. After deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. William Wallace was sentenced to death. Yet the story did not end there. Only weeks later, the Court of Criminal Appeal carefully reviewed the case. The judges concluded that the evidence, while certainly capable of raising suspicion, did not prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. Wallace's conviction was quashed, making legal history as one of the earliest occasions in England when a murder conviction was overturned because the evidence was judged insufficient after a full review. He returned to Liverpool a free man. Freedom, however, did not restore the life he had once known. His home no longer held the comfort it once had. His daily routines had disappeared, and wherever he went, curious eyes often followed. Some believed firmly in his innocence. Others remained convinced that justice had somehow slipped away. William himself rarely spoke publicly about the case. He continued working for the Prudential for a time before his health declined further. Those who knew him described a quieter man than before, someone who carried an unmistakable sadness following Julia's death. He died just 2 years later, in 1933, and was buried beside Julia in Liverpool. Their story, however, refused to rest. Writers, detectives, barristers, historians, and crime novelists returned to the case decade after decade. Some became convinced that William had devised an extraordinarily clever alibi. Others believed the opposite, that the very complexity of the mystery pointed away from him. One alternative theory focused on Richard Gordon Parry, a younger former colleague of William's. Parry knew the family's routines, had previously worked the same insurance collection routes, and was later alleged to have given inconsistent accounts of his movements. Supporters of this theory have suggested he possessed both opportunity and local knowledge, yet those claims remain unproven. Police investigated Parry during the original inquiry and never charged him with the crime. His reported alibis, although questioned by later writers, were never conclusively disproved. Still, others believe the answer may lie with someone whose name has never entered the historical record. Could an unknown visitor have called unexpectedly? Did Julia let in someone she trusted? Was the missing money merely a distraction rather than a motive? Each possibility explains certain pieces of the puzzle, while leaving others untouched. That, perhaps, is why the mystery continues to fascinate. Unlike many famous criminal cases, there is no single piece of overlooked evidence waiting to settle the debate. Instead, there are fragments, small observations, uncertain timings, conflicting recollections, and ordinary human memories shaped by the passing of time. The famous crime writer Raymond Chandler once referred to the Wallace case as the impossible murder. His description has endured because it captures something many people feel after studying the evidence. Every path seems to arrive at another crossroads. Every convincing argument is met by an equally persuasive question. Perhaps that is fitting. Life itself rarely offers perfect certainty. History, too, is often incomplete. Documents disappear. Witnesses remember differently. Tiny details that seemed unimportant at the time become invaluable decades later, while the facts we wish had been recorded are often the very ones that vanished forever. And amid all the debate, it is worth pausing to remember Julia Wallace herself. She was not simply the central figure in an enduring mystery. She was a musician who enjoyed quiet evenings at home. A woman remembered by family and neighbors as gentle, courteous, and kind. The mystery surrounding her death has become one of Britain's most enduring unsolved cases. But behind every theory, every courtroom argument, and every carefully drawn map of Liverpool stands the memory of a real person whose story deserves to be told with dignity. If you were to visit Wolverton Street today, you might easily walk past number 29 without a second glance. The rows of terraced houses still speak of everyday life. People come and go. Children laugh. Neighbors greet one another across garden walls. Time has softened the edges of the events that unfolded there during one cold January evening in 1931, yet it has never entirely erased them. Perhaps somewhere within the countless newspaper reports, witness statements, court transcripts, and personal recollections lies the answer that investigators searched for so diligently. Or perhaps the final truth disappeared with those who lived through those remarkable days. Whatever the truth may be, this mystery continues to remind us that history still keeps many of its secrets. Until next time, sleep well. True Crime Sleep Stories is hosted and created by Kelly Brink, produced with the support of our dedicated team. Subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform to help us keep telling these haunting tales. Visit patreon.com/kellybrink for exclusive content and to join our community. Thank you for listening, and we'll meet you in the shadows next time. Until then, stay safe out there and lock your doors. Good night.